Part 38. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 371. Chapter 371 Sunian's Concern. When Josu said this, Sunian was drinking coffee. After hearing this, she almost spit out her coffee immediately. Mercenaries. Is it so crazy to use? Sunian regained his composure. What, are you using such a big posture? Unexpectedly, after Sunian finished speaking, Josu said with a serious face, it's necessary. Of course it's necessary. Madam, Mr. Lee has told me to completely follow your wishes and satisfy all your needs. It's not a difficult thing to do, just spend a little money. Madam, as Mr. Lee's wife, I think you should know very well that Mr. Lee is short of everything but money. Sunian looked at Josu's serious look. At this moment, I really felt that my knowledge of Mary Sue novels was a bit shallow. Even mercenaries were used. When Josu saw Sunian like this, he knew he had made the right idea. Madam, I know you are a considerate person and would not want to cause trouble to Mr. Gu if it is not necessary, but this is really not necessary. Please, I just need to give the money to the mercenaries, and there's nothing to worry about. Under Josu's persuasion, Sunian could only reluctantly agree. But she has one more request. That, can it be broadcast live? As soon as these words came out, Sun Ying'er's eyes lit up next to her. Josu, who was looked at by the two women, looked like Santa Claus and said with a smile on his face, of course, if I can't fulfill such a small request, my boss Lee will definitely be severely punished if he finds out. Deduct my salary. And Josu does things really fast. In less than a day, he had everything done. Then Sunian and Sun Ying'er were able to see a group of fierce-looking people holding loudspeakers that played her voice. How should I describe this scene? Very violent. The other side. After Lan Min had the operation, her face was tightly surrounded by gauze. The pain on the face is not the most important thing. The most important thing is the heart. Her mind has been filled with Lee Baiken's expression that day these days. Lee Baiken hugged the woman Sunian and said that he wanted to turn the hole in her head into a permanent scar. This admiration tortured her day and night. Until now, Lan Min realized how important Lee Baiken was in his heart. No one knew how happy she was when she learned that Lee Baiken and Sunian had gone to the Civil Affairs Bureau and thought they were getting a divorce, as if she saw hope. She knew why Lee Baiken fell in love with such a woman. You must know that Lee Baiken has expressed his dislike for that woman in front of her many times before. Baiken must be angry with himself. He must be hoping that he can abandon Sunian and choose him. That's it? It must be that way. But Lee Baiken's next operation gave her a heavy blow. This has caused Lan Min to be in increasingly bad spirits these past few days. It can be imagined how uncomfortable it was for her to be woken up by Sunian's voice. Lan Min, how is your health now? How is your forehead? Is the scar big? I haven't heard from you these days. I'm very worried. Can you give me some news? Lan Min, can you hear me? Now that I have been recognized by Baiken, it's like the kind of mutual love you said, so I am now your legitimate sister-in-law. Lan Min, can you heard? Lan Min covered his ears, trying to stop these random sounds. But nothing can be done to stop it. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 372. Chapter 372 Sunian, a sister-in-law is like a mother, rounded up she is your mother. Someone is coming, someone is coming. Lan Min's movement was so loud that it naturally attracted nurses and doctors. When she saw the nurse, Lan Min felt as if she had seen a savior. She grabbed the nurse's clothes tightly. Hurry up, get her out quickly, get this out, get rid of her quickly. She doesn't want to hear Sunian's voice, she doesn't want to hear this woman's voice. Lanji tugged the nurse's clothes. Miss Lan, you need to rest now. You need to rest before you can recover. If you don't rest well, the scars on your head will become more and more serious. Miss Lan, you have to calm down. You must not stop. Stimulated. Do not be irritated. When he heard this, Lan Min suddenly came back to his senses. Her hands were tightly tugging on the sheets underneath her. This Sunian is deliberately irritating himself, not hoping that he can recover. It's really dangerous, so dangerous. I almost fell for this guy's trick. Lanji took a deep breath, hoping that his emotions could calm down. Lanji, speak up. Why don't you speak? As the saying goes, a sister-in-law is like a mother. If I round up, she is your mother. Is this how you treat your mother? Lanji, you are really a bit unfilial. Lanzhen, please come out. Baikan and I have known each other for so long. Don't we have some friendship? Isn't the friendship worth your peace? The more Lan Min didn't want to hear it, the clearer Sunian's voice became. She covered her ears desperately. But this voice could not be suppressed no matter what. In the end, Lan Min could only cry out in pain. Lan Min really couldn't bear it, and she grabbed the doctor again. I beg you, I really beg you, you can do whatever you want, I can do whatever you want, please let the sound disappears. As long as you make the sound disappear, then I can do whatever you want. But the nurse was helpless. Ms. Lan, the moment the sound appeared, we sent a special person to deal with the sound, but we really had no choice, because there were mercenaries outside with loudspeakers, and we were just in the hospital. There is no way to fight against mercenaries. Miss Lan, you really don't want to embarrass us like this. Please, please, I really don't want to hear this voice anymore. Lan Min became more and more excited. The nurse has no choice but to see a doctor. The doctor, who had been calling Huo Linyuan since he entered the door, also hung up the phone at this time, and told the nurse with a solemn expression, I just asked Mr. Huo for instructions, and Mr. Huo ordered Miss Lan to be injected with a sedative. When the nurse heard this, she immediately knew what to do. She immediately summoned several nurses, confined Lan Min to the bed, and started injecting sedatives. You must know that Lan Min's spirit has not been very good these days, so he used such coercive means. The harm to Lan Min can be said to be great. Lanren struggled with all his strength. I have finished injecting a sedative, but it seems to have no effect on Miss Lan. What should I do? Keep going, we must stabilize Miss Ian's mood. If she cannot stabilize her mood, it will definitely affect the injury on her head and Miss Ian's appearance, so we can't explain it. The doctor made a prompt decision to give another injection. Just like that, after 2 injections of sedatives, Lan Min finally calmed down. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 373. Chapter 373. Is it because Lan Min can't afford it or Huo Linyuan can't afford it? Sunian now admires Josu's ability to do things more and more. Originally it was a recording. But when I saw that I was very interested, I changed it to online. Connection is concerned about Lan Min's health. Madam, I just received the news that Huo Linyuan has also gone to the mercenary group to discuss it, so the next scene may be a bit bloody, and I don't recommend you to watch it to avoid having nightmares because of these scenes. Bloody. Sunian lamented once again that there is really no law in the world of Mary Sue novels. She couldn't help but fantasize about that scene. I don't dare to think about it. I immediately looked at each other and Sun Ying agreed to Josu's proposal. Sunian also felt that Lan Min was already feeling very uncomfortable, so he immediately discussed the company's affairs with Lan Min. After all, I started a company. You have to do something, and you can't be laughed at by others. But after a while, Josu ran up to Sunian with a serious face and said, "Madam, Huo Linyuan called, do you want to answer it?" Huo Linyuan, if you don't want to answer the call, madam, then I'll hang up now. Sunian really never thought that Huo Linyuan, the male protagonist, would call him directly, but then he thought about it and realized that according to the usual routine, Huo Linyuan was really going to threaten her severely and warn her not to touch Lan Min. Touch his woman. Is this because Huo Linyuan can't afford it or Sunian can't afford it? Sun Ying'er said with a hint of contempt. Sunian really wanted to know how this maniacal male protagonist would threaten his vicious female counterpart, and then nodded to Josu. Josu took out his mobile phone from his pocket after getting Sunian's idea. The call was answered soon. "Sunian, your spirit can no longer bear it. You have to be merciful and merciful. You have to know when enough is enough." When the phone was answered, the male protagonist Huo Linyuan's voice rang. These words surprised Sunian. After all, she thought that Huo Linyuan would say after the call was connected, "I'm warning you, don't do anything to my woman. If you persist in your obsession, then I will definitely let you do whatever you want." Now that Huo Linyuan is like this, I have to admit that the male protagonist is quite polite. You have to be merciful and merciful. You say this as the loser. Mr. Huo, don't you think it's a bit ridiculous? When Sunian said this, he saw the dim look in Sun Ying'er's eyes. At this time, Sunian realized that whether Sun Ying'er fell in love with Huo Linyuan because of the plot or really, for Sun Ying'er, he was the man she had loved for many years. It is impossible to eliminate it simply by saying it is eliminated. Sunian held her hand. When he held it, he realized how cold Sun Ying'er's hand was at the moment. "Sunian, what do you want?" Huo Linyuan spoke again. Those who didn't know what he said thought that Huo Linyuan was giving her a reward, which made Sunian feel a little uncomfortable. "What do I want? Don't forget that it was you who provoked this incident. Compared with what I want more. I want to know, Mr. Huo, what do you want? You desperately helped Lan Ren take action against me and my husband. What do you want to do? Do you want my husband to continue to be entangled with your woman? Mr. Huo, it's indeed winter now. I really don't understand your desire to find a free hat for your head. After all, the dignified president of the Huo group and the head of the Huo family can't even buy a hat. Well, it would be a bit unsightly if this was spread out." End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 374. Chapter 374. Huo Linyuan's psychological quality is too poor. Actually, Sunian understands. The reason why Huo Linyuan started with her marriage to Li Baikan was simply because the marriage of a company leader must be stable. Even if it is placed in an ordinary company. The marriage of a company leader must also be approved by the board of directors. After all, if there is any scandal in the marriage, it will definitely affect the company's stock price. But she said it on purpose. After all, how could the male protagonist, who was so arrogant, tolerate being a cuckold? As expected, Huo Linyuan said coldly, "Miss Su, I hope that when you speak, you will consider the consequences of speaking like this." Sunian snorted coldly when he heard this. He was indeed a domineering president. "Of course I know you have to use your brain when speaking, but Mr. Huo, what I said is not true. What is the past between Lan Min and Li Baikan? As Lan Min's man, you should know better than me. Now you are threatening me. It's better for me to take care of my own woman at this point." Sunian paused and said, "Do you, Mr. Huo, want two men to serve one wife?" After saying this, there was a strong noise on the other end of the phone. Of the kind that is very ear-splitting. Sunian's ears hurt so much from the shock. Oh, this Huo Linyuan's psychological quality is really bad. He just says a few words casually and then throws the phone away, like a bitch, Sunian said in disgust while rubbing his ears. Unexpectedly, when she raised her eyes, she saw Sun Ying'er's admiring eyes. Such a look made Sunian a little embarrassed. Sun Ying'er, Nian, you are really awesome, do you know? I have known Huo Linyuan for so many years, but I have never seen anyone dare to speak to him like this. You are really awesome like this. What, sister, you can't say that. I actually made the call because of that. Hee, I thought that even if Huo Linyuan had the ability, he couldn't cause trouble for me over the phone. Sunian hee. Laughed a few times. Sun Ying'er shook her head. Anyway, she didn't even dare to treat Huo Linyuan like that on the phone. I really don't have the guts. Sunian, but now we have to see if Huo Linyuan will call again. If Huo Linyuan doesn't call, then Lan Min's health may only have a small problem. On the contrary, our goal has been achieved. Sunian is also a little curious about how deep the love between the male and female protagonists is. At the same time, if Huo Linyuan really calls and asks him to put forward conditions, what conditions should he put forward? When Sunian thought of this, an idea flashed across his mind. And Josu's cell phone ringtone rang again. Josu glanced at the phone screen, and then gave Sunian a look. Sure enough, when the call was answered again, Huo Linyuan's voice rang out with gritted teeth, I know this matter, and neither of us can take advantage of it, so I just hope that you can leave me alone while I'm recovering from illness. I can satisfy you any request you have. You won't take action against us either. Sunian raised his eyebrows slightly. Do you want to stop the war? After receiving Huo Linyuan's affirmative reply, Sunian said, if I remember correctly, the Huo family has a hot spring resort center in the south of the city. It's almost winter now. If Mr. Huo can give me this hot spring resort center, then I think I will have a great time this winter. Okay, as you wish, I will arrange for someone to deliver the transfer documents to you. After saying this, he hung up the phone. That one is called a neat one. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 375. Chapter 375. The male protagonist is awesome. I have to say that the main thing is the atmosphere. In just a few hours, various contracts for the hot spring resort appeared in front of her. When signing the contract, Sun Ying'er couldn't help but sigh, this resort center is a holy place for leisure. There are many business banquets and various entertainment places. Huo Linyuan gave it to you just to let you relax for a while. He is really willing. After all, she was a man she had loved for many years, so Sun Ying'er inevitably felt a little uncomfortable. It's not reluctance, but confidence. Sunian looked at the document in his hand and said casually, to Huo Linyuan, I am just a little person, even a shrimp. Now Huo Linyuan is just going through the motions with me, thinking let me settle down for a while, and then let Lan Min rest in peace. When you have recovered, will you take back everything and take revenge? Sun Ying'er thought about the same truth. No wonder Huo Linyuan agreed without thinking when Sunian put forward the conditions. It turned out that I was waiting here. When thinking of this, Sun Ying'er looked at Sunian, what about you? Why do you want this? That's because I want to take a good bath in the hot springs. Now that winter is here, it's wonderful to think about lazily soaking in the hot springs, especially the hot springs stolen from Lan Min. Sunian said. Yawned. Sun Ying'er looked at the person who was as lazy as a cat. Although Sunian's reason was very reasonable, she always felt a little strange. She always felt that Sunian might have other plans. Nian, is this really the reason for you? Sunian glanced at me and said, what other reason can I have? Don't look at me like this. If you look at me like this, You might think I'm a cruel person. Why do you think so? You must be hiding something from me. Sunian, I am your sister. You can't hide it from me. Just tell me. As Sun Ying spoke, she threw Sunian down and started tickling Sunian. Whether you want to say it or not, I'm asking you, do you want to say it? I really don't have any backup. Ha ha ha, sister, stop scratching. I really don't have any backup. Sunian desperately avoided. Sister, help me, please stop scratching, please, I really beg you, I really have no backup plan. But the more Sun Ying saw Sunian like this, the more she refused to let Sunian go. The two women were fighting like this. Sun Ying tried her best, but still couldn't get any useful information from Sunian. 3 days later, the hot spring resort shocked everyone by discovering ruins dating back 3,000 years. Experts from various fields of government rushed there. At the same time, some people started to look for Sunian to discuss what to do with the land. According to exploration, this site is proof of its relevance to history and culture, and can even be said to improve the overall visibility of the entire city. After Sunian was found, he immediately donated it without saying a word, but still donated it unconditionally. And also let us cooperate. Archaeological experts learned of this and came to thank Sunian in person for his contribution to archaeology. Government leaders also came to receive the Lishi Group, and highly praised the Lishi Group, inspecting the progress of the landmark building. The Lishi Group's stock market has also been trading at the daily limit for half a month, and the market value of the entire company has also soared rapidly. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 376. Chapter 376, Stealing the Glory That Originally Belonged to the Huo Family. Sunian used his mobile phone to read various news about the Li family. You must know that these honors belonged to the Huo family in the previous life. I didn't expect that she would get it in this life, and she got it so easily. It's really interesting. Huo Linyuan asked her what she wanted that day, and she thought about the ruins as soon as she looked at her phone. Just mentioned it by the way. Unexpectedly, Huo Linyuan agreed without even thinking about it. You must know that when she heard Huo Linyuan's promise, she thought she had heard wrongly. After all, it's so simple. Let me hug you. Li Baikan held the person in his arms. Hearing the tiredness in the man's voice, Sunian couldn't help but look sideways. These days, because of the affairs of this hot spring resort, there are various political and business banquets and entertainments. She can rest after returning from socializing, but he has to deal with the company's affairs, and he is indeed tired. Sunian couldn't help but reach out to touch the dark blue under his eyes. Hey, it seems that this guy is really tired. Although he is young, it is not a problem for him to be so tired. The continuous rotation these days has really made Li Baikan a little bit overwhelmed. But what worries Li Baikan more is that he spends less time with Sunian. He leaned next to Sunian's ear and took a breath of her unique scent. I feel much better now. Such behavior really made Sunian laugh. Li Baikan, what does this mean? It makes me look like a monster. I think you are a fairy. Li Baikan's sudden words really made Sunian's body tense up. How did he pick it up? What a coincidence. I was shocked. The man's lips raised slightly. My dear, tell me the truth, are you a fairy in the sky? If you are not a fairy, then how come I feel relaxed after I inhale the fairy energy from you? Quite a few. Such words made Sunian's ears turn slightly red. What did you say? Be honest. This man is getting better and better at flirting now, but he can't continue to be so tired after all. He is in good health. Only when he is not tired can the quality of the seeds produced be good. If he is tired like this, then the seeds in his body will. How good can seeds be? Lee Baiken, who originally wanted to spend some time with Sun Yan when. Why did it involve the seeds again? He coughed heavily in an attempt to bring Sun Yan back from his thoughts. But failed. Let me think carefully about what to do. Although Lee Baiken allows me to check various things in the company, he will definitely not let me actually intervene. Yes. I'll find him some kidney tonifying stuff and give him a good supplement, then the seeds will definitely be fine. After all, this matter is the same as farming. You must know that farmers are always willing to spend money when cultivating seeds. After all, only if the seeds are of high quality, good crops can be grown. Lee Baiken felt that he could not let this little woman continue to ponder. If she continued to ponder, then her own seeds. Then Lee Baiken continued to speak, but it's worth it to be tired these days. This time because of you, Susu, Huo Linyuan suffered such a big loss, and it was Huo Linyuan who took the initiative to suffer the loss. I heard that Huo Linyuan's recent bad mood. It's just a coincidence, it's nothing. Ha ha ha, Huo Linyuan put such a large piece of fat directly to my mouth, it's strange that he is in a good mood. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 377. Chapter 377 Liawei Daihuang pills, to treat kidney deficiency, no sugar. I am really curious about Huo Linyuan's expression now. He must be in a particularly bad mood. After all, there are only 3 days left, and everything in these 3 days belongs to him. You must know that human nature is the most precious thing. The more clearly it is his, the more he does not get it, the more complicated his mood becomes. Hey, this feels really good, it makes me feel like I got the heroine's script. And I used this incident to completely open up my reputation and show my face in front of various political figures. When Lee Baiken dies in the future, it will be much easier for me to take over his position. Ha ha ha, I really feel the joy of rebirth. It's really not easy to make Huo Linyuan so angry. Susu, you may not know that everyone in the Huo group is in danger now, for fear that Huo Linyuan will be offended if he is not careful. Since Sun Yan is in such a good mood now, of course I must take this opportunity to say something that Sun Yan likes to hear. As expected, after Sun Yan heard this, the smile on his face became a little deeper. It's just a coincidence, Sun Yan said with a smile, but at this moment, she was as straightforward as Huo Linyuan that day. If I guessed correctly, there must be something fishy in the resort, or some manipulation. He just dropped it into our hands like a time bomb. When Lee Baiken heard Sun Yan say the word "we," the smile on his face became a little brighter. Indeed, there are some problems with fire protection and sanitation in this resort. These problems can be big or small. I guess Huo Linyuan is just thinking about this, that's why I was able to agree so quickly. But I didn't expect that she would make wedding clothes for us. Susu is still smart. It turns out that the old man's eyes are better than my son's eyes. Otherwise, how could I see such a good woman like you, Susu, with my eyes? Even though Lee Baiken has been calling himself Susu for a few days, Sun Yan is still a little uncomfortable with it. Lee Baiken went on to say a lot of good things. Sun Yan was completely happy. Since Sun Yan is happy, he has to do something happy. So just when Lee Baiken was about to get out of bed and pour a cup of tea, his body suddenly stiffened. Yes, I asked Josu to buy some Liawei Daihuang pills for this guy to try. Lee Baiken, why are you still thinking about this? Hey. After all, it treats kidney deficiency and does not contain sugar. How could Lee Baiken let Sun Yan send this message? If he really sent this message, then he immediately came back and pressed Sun Yan's cell phone. Sun Yan, who was writing a text message seriously, raised his head in confusion. My dear, I'm too tired these days, please sleep with me for a while, he said and pulled the person into his arms. Aren't you going to drink water? In such a situation, what else would Li Baikan drink? So he pressed the person into his arms and said, I suddenly don't want to drink anymore. I'm suddenly very sleepy. Please sleep with me for a while. Sunian, who was imprisoned in Li Baikan's arms, showed an expression of sudden realization. He turned out to be so tired. It seems that Liawei Daihuang pills alone is not enough, plus Shenbao tablets. After all, he is good, and so am I. Li Baikan, isn't this difficult to get through? It's better to go to sleep. It'll be fine when you fall asleep. I think this little woman will forget it when she wakes up. Facts have proved that Sunian is not easy to forget some things, especially very important things. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 378. Chapter 378 Afraid of Ader. Sunian met Huo Linyuan at a business forum. To be precise, Huo Linyuan came to her personally. Business symposium, big guys gathered. Sunian has been stealing the show these days, so he naturally has to accompany Li Baikan to attend. She looked at the man sitting among the big guys. He obviously only said a few words occasionally, but she felt that the whole place was under his control. Sometimes, Sunian even felt that his simple words or two it changed the rhythm. However, after Sunian stayed for a while, she felt a little depressed. She gently pulled Li Baikan, who was talking to someone, and went out. Miss Su. Sunian turned around subconsciously when she heard the voice, and saw Huo Linyuan in a straight suit walking towards her. She became somewhat interested. Congratulations to Miss Su for being in the limelight recently and becoming a popular figure. Thank you, Mr. Huo. As Huo Linyuan approached, she really felt a chill. But what does Huo Linyuan want to do here? Does he want to attack her directly? It won't be so low. After all, he is still a domineering president. I wouldn't do such a low-level thing. But Sunian didn't have time to take it back. Her throat was grabbed by the man. My blessing is not something that ordinary people can endure. Huo Linyuan did not hide the murderous look in his eyes at all. But Sunian was not timid at all. Even so, he met Huo Linyuan's gaze. Then, Mr. Huo, what do you mean by this? Do you want to manually take back your blessing from me? At this point, he sneered. There was a sound. Such behavior is undoubtedly not a provocation. Do you really think I dare not do anything to you here? No, I don't think so at all, but you attacked me in a fit of anger, and the Li group behind me can use this as an excuse to hold you accountable, and make you suffer severely, and even make you suffer miserably. The price is not bad. Yes, Huo Linyuan is indeed the male protagonist. But she, Sunian, is not a vegetarian either. In my last life, I was a domineering president for so many years, so I was afraid of being a dick. Huo Linyuan obviously didn't expect that Sunian would have such courage. I didn't expect that you love Li Baikan so much, and you have to think about Li Baikan at this time. Don't underestimate a woman's love. If a woman falls in love with a man, she can do anything for the man. Sunian paused slightly when he said this. The same goes for the opposite. Huo, after all, aren't you willing to give me such a big cake in the resort for the health of that woman Lan Min? It's better that Sunian didn't mention this. After mentioning this, Huo Linyuan looked bad. The hot spring resort was a project many years ago. Because it was so long ago, the hot spring resort projects have been gradually declining in recent years. There were only two paths before him, either to reinvest or to give up. Sunian just asked for a hot spring resort. He thought about giving it to Sunian for the time being, and maybe he could use this opportunity to make Sunian, or Li Baikan behind Sunian, suffer a severe loss. But I didn't expect it to happen like this. It is necessary to know that the upper-class society is the most well-informed. He has been ridiculed by several people during this period. I really want to thank you, Mr. Huo, for giving me such a delicious cake, Sunian said warmly again. Sunian, are you really not afraid of death? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 379. Chapter 379 Blackmailing the male protagonist. Of course I'm afraid, but I bet you don't dare to use force. After Sunian said this, she really felt like a bit of an online bastard. The two of them were in a stalemate. At this time, Josu also arrived with people. Josu was frightened to death when he saw Sunian being pinched by Huo Linyuan's neck. After all, if something happens to Sunian, then he has no way to explain it to Li Baikan and the old man. Sunian glanced at Josu. I'm sorry, Mr. Huo, you have missed the best moment to kill me. I believe my husband will reach it in the shortest time, and by then it will be completely ugly. Sunian, you really impress me. Huo Linyuan's voice could almost be said to be gritted teeth. I'm the one who's impressed. You actually want to kill your woman's love rival with your own hands. Haha, if you really have two men serving one wife, then you kill me. If I turn into a ghost, I will definitely watch from the side. Maybe I will also give you something. Come on you guys. Sunian now really feels that he is so awesome. At this time, you still dare to challenge the majesty of the male protagonist. But it feels really exciting. When Li Baikan got the news, he rushed over and saw this scene. His heart was hanging together. What does Huo Linyuan want to do? Let my wife go. I don't know why, but when Sunian heard Li Baikan's voice, she felt a little more confident. You dare not kill me. If you kill me, you will never get my kidney. If you want me to die, then let your beloved woman die with me. Huo Linyuan, if you can, kill me. Got me. Having said this, how could Huo Linyuan take action? He just opened the person with one palm. Sunian fell directly to the ground. I have to admit that the intensity of the male protagonist fighting the female supporting role is really cruel. Li Baikan immediately ran to Sunian's side and quickly held him in his arms. Li Baikan's words haven't been spoken yet. Sunian's voice appeared in my mind. Haha, male protagonist, if I don't blackmail this male protagonist this time, then my name will not be Sunian. Baikan, Weavio, it hurts so much, it hurts so much, it almost hurts me to death. Then Sunian deliberately cried in an artificial voice. Even though Li Baikan knew very well that this little woman was acting. But just listening to these voices, his heart seemed to be pricked by needles, and then he raised his head and looked at Huo Linyuan fiercely. Mr. Huo is really so majestic. Do you think you, Mr. Huo, can be supreme over everything? I'll wait, it's just mud under your feet. What happened? At this time, the leader of the organizer also came over in a hurry. Today's forum was originally organized by the Director of Economic Development. This move by Huo Linyuan is undoubtedly not a slap in the face of the Secretary of Economic Development. The director looked at Huo Linyuan. Mr. Huo. Huo Linyuan didn't expect this. He just wanted to let this woman Sunian know that she should be afraid and not do whatever she wants. He was also able to take the opportunity to vent some of the anger he had accumulated because of the hot spring resort. Director, it was just a little accident, nothing special. These words made Sunian sneer. The male protagonist is awesome, the male protagonist is a male character no matter how you say it. Why can't this guy dare to take the role? Well, in Mary Sue novels, this kind of behavior means that the male protagonist has too much power, so it looks like the male protagonist is very awesome. Haha, awesome, really awesome, Does anyone really like to see such a domineering president? Although Sunian didn't want to admit it, she really loved this kind of novel back then. End of this chapter. The vicious female supporting character's character collapsed after her voice was eavesdropped. Author, R.O. Wich Jong Word. Chapter 380. Chapter 380 MD, if you can't explain it, just turn off the air conditioning. What kind of a hero is that? The director's face could not be any better when he saw Huo Linyuan going out like this. Moreover, Sunian donated the place to the government without hesitation and received great praise from the superiors. If you don't side with Sunian this time, it will be unjustifiable both emotionally and rationally. Is the conflict between Mr. Huo and Mrs. Li an accident? How did this accident happen? I'm very curious about it. Why don't you tell me, Mr. Huo? Sunian knew that the director was on his side when he heard this. Immediately, my crying voice increased slightly. Huo Linyuan knew very well what the director's attitude meant. Accidents are things that happen by coincidence. Huo Linyuan and the director were facing each other. Don't give in to anyone. At this time, Li Baikan's voice also sounded. Mr. Huo has already said it was an accident, so don't pursue it, director. But Mr. Huo had better be careful. After all, this accident happened to my wife, but next time this accident may not happen to anyone. Everyone looked over following the sound. He saw Li Baikan holding Sunian in his arms. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Li Baikan's anger was really indescribable when he saw Huo Linyuan being so arrogant. He really didn't expect that Huo Linyuan would be so arrogant. He just didn't pay attention for a while and he would treat Sunian like this. Now Li Baikan really didn't dare to think about it. In his previous life, Sunian faced Huo Linyuan like this so-called dogfighting male protagonist. How much loss did you suffer? Sunian couldn't stand Huo Linyuan's arrogance either. Forget it, it's better not to pretend to be weak. It's useless for a vicious female supporting character to be weak. Li Baikan, this useless man. It's really useless except for providing seeds. I still have to do it myself. After all, what does the suffering owner need to pay attention to? Huo Linyuan, don't expect anything. My husband can't meet your expectations. After all, my husband can't choke a woman's neck for no reason. Sunian choked up a few times when he said this, and I'm also very sad. I want to know, Mr. Huo, why are you doing this to me, and what is it about me that makes you so angry, Mr. Huo? If you have the ability, just say that the resort belongs to you, Huo Linyuan. If you have the ability, say it. As long as you have said it, I, Sunian, also think you have the guts. TCH, you are so arrogant and look down on everyone. Since you are so arrogant, why don't you just say that I take the credit? This look of pity on my face made the people around me feel that Huo Linyuan was being unreasonable. Huo Linyuan was also very aware of the current situation and knew that it was unreasonable for him to do so, but seeing Sunian's arrogance made him feel very uncomfortable. No woman has ever dared to speak like this. Sunian, you are special. Huo Linyuan finally said these words. Sunian. What does this mean? What does Huo Linyuan's words mean? Wasn't this what the male protagonist said to the female protagonist? Could it be that Huo Linyuan also likes me? Such bad luck. Who cares that Huo Linyuan, a second-hand man, is a complete rotten cucumber? You must know that Li Baikan is good at this. His chastity is still with him, but if Li Baikan is a rotten cucumber, then I will not be so active. Li Baikan. Yes, I am very special. I am so special to Huo Linyuan that you can do this to me in public. Huo Linyuan, can you give me a reason? It can be regarded as convincing me. If you don't give it, then you, Huo Linyuan, will go crazy on the spot. So what if I don't give it? After the male protagonist said this, Sunian clearly felt that he had used the air conditioning function that he brought with him. MD, if you can't say anything, just turn off the air conditioning of TM, what a kind of guy you are. End of this chapter.